Good morning. Thank you for joining me in this tour of a beehive and with the opportunity of meeting some honeybees. Honeybees are important pollinators. One of the great advantages for honeybees is they tend to go back to the same plant rather than moving around between plants. This is a beehive. It looks like an ordinary box, but it's not. It's designed in a special way. It's designed to replicate how bees would live in nature, with special measurements, because bees always design things in the same way and they build them with their combs 35 millimeters apart and all those little cells angled at 13 degrees to the horizontal. If there's too much space, they fill it with wax. If there's not enough space, they stick it together. So let's go through the beehive. You may wonder why there's a brick on top. It keeps the roof on, but it also is useful as a marker sometimes as to how you put it down. There's the roof off. Sometimes there's insulation in there in the winter, especially in the winter. Polycarbonate roof on top. The purpose of that is so I can see through it. It also keeps the bees in. This part is a super. And the super's got some nice handles on it, the way the standard national hive is built. It's full of frames, and these are designed again with special spaces. We fill them with foundation wax, which we buy or make ourselves, which is printed with the hexagons. Sometimes we just leave a strip along the top and the bees will draw that down. That's useful if you're making comb, because it means that it's much thinner wax. Sometimes it's wired like that one was, so that it doesn't break up when we're spinning the honey out. Here's one that's had honey in it. Bees have drawn it out. I've taken the wax caps off the top and I'll be using it again this year. Fill it up. You can use them for several years. All spaced out so that we get a reasonable thickness of wax. It's a balance between the amount of wax and the amount of space we've got. If it's too thick, it's difficult to get out. This is a queen excluder. The queen excluder is important because it gives the queen at the bottom with all the brood. It's designed that she won't fit through there, but the worker bees will. And the frame of it's designed with a special size called a bee space. That's the space that a bee will work in and won't fill with wax or stick together. And again, it's the same on the top of the box. And each of those frames is designed to be 35 millimeters apart. They slot together in that way. Again, the wax is in there with wire because it's really quite heavy. One of those can weigh up to 7 pounds. The whole box can weigh 70 pounds plus, which is quite heavy when you're lifting it and moving it around. And the box sits on a floor, and the floor has an entrance. There's the entrance block, normally just a few inches wide. Sometimes you turn it round, seal it, and that brown stuff on top was propolis, and propolis is what they use for sticking things together. Sometimes beehives have full wide entrances. It tends to be less common these days because the floor is designed these days with gauze at the bottom, which means that the varroa can drop out of the bottom. Then we've got the other thing we all know about, the smoker. Smoker is difficult to light sometimes. I use wood chippings and tend to put bits of grass on top, which makes the smoke cooler. This makes the bees go down. Bees do normally live in trees, and it sometimes makes them think that their tree's on fire, so they've got to go. Here's a bee suit. It's important to wear a bee suit. I wouldn't dream of going to see the bees without a bee suit on. It's quite dangerous. Bee stings hurt and can be dangerous for some people. It's important to zip it up. I don't usually wear a full-size one. It gets too hot in there, especially in summer, which is when we do most of our beekeeping. Make sure it's zipped up. I've been known to go to the beehive without the zip done. It's a bit disastrous. And then gloves. Most of us wear just these vinyl gloves. Leather gloves tend to be very clumsy to use. So here's the beehive. There we are, that's what they look like. There's quite a lot of bees around today. It's a nice sunny day. Now we're going to have a look inside a beehive with some bees in. First thing to do is to look at the base. Always look at the entrance. Sometimes you can see what's going on as much there as you can by going through the middle. Taking the top off gently, don't want to disturb the bees. Have a look through the top and you can see those top bars of the frames there, the bees working around there. This was a swarm I collected a few weeks ago. They all went onto foundation and they're now drawing it out. Just having a look at the top there just to make sure the queen isn't on top. Very rarely they are, but they have been known to be. That's just a spacer at the end, just to fill in any space to stop them filling it with their wax. And then we're just going to go through these. There's a frame. They've started drawing that frame out. Not many bees on it. They don't need the space at the moment. If you look how they're drawing that wax from the basic foundation, they're drawing it all out. All those cells are absolutely precisely measured. It's amazing how they managed to do that. Next one's got a bit more on it probably, because they work they have a centre is where the beehive gone nest. There's more on it. Again, they're looking at it. Started filling a little bit of it out, but not very much at the moment. Keeping moving into the centre. They stick these frames together with propolis. It can be a bit difficult sometimes. There they've got some honey stored in that one. There's the honey with wax caps on, and underneath it there's the nectar. And the nectar is being changed from 80% water to less than 20% water. And the bees make the honey so that they've got supplies for the winter, and more importantly for the spring when the queen starts laying again, so that they can actually get going really quickly, much more so than many other insects which have to start with a new queen and start from scratch. Just in the centre of here there's a little bit of brood in the middle there, but this queen's just started laying. There's honey at the top, and you can just see under my hand, you can see some pollen. There tends to be an arc of pollen around the brood, followed by an arc of honey. These bees are quite calm, well behaved. Not all bees are well behaved, and they are affected by the weather, which is quite a nice day today. Here there's a lot of brood. All these cells, these little sort of biscuit coloured cells, they've all got a bee in that's in the pupa stage. That's the stage after they've spun the cocoon. They don't always lay in every cell, and they often leave cells with where the wire's underneath. There's a little queen cell there. Just a little test for one they're doing just to keep the beekeeper on her toes or his toes. Very unlikely to be making a new queen in this colony at the moment. There's some more, quite a bit more brood here. Looking there for the queen. Can't see the queen at the moment, but again you can see that there's lines where they haven't laid, or she hasn't laid I should say. We'll put that one back. These are still fairly light compared to some because they haven't got a lot of honey in or a lot of brood in. I'll look at the next one, see what's going on. These bees have been foraging on local flowers, a lot of trees around. They'll be going to the hedgerows. In an urban area there's the gardens as well. Can sometimes get some exotic pollen in honey when you examine it. The brood nest itself is a shape of a rugby ball. There's a little bit of pollen in some of those cells. We tend to get quite a lot of pollen in this area. Some areas do have a shortage of pollen and you have to feed bees pollen. I know a beekeeper in Canada who has to feed pollen to them every year because there's no pollen around until May at least, and the bees have been laying quite a long time by then. There's the queen. I put the white dot on her so I can find her. Here's a close-up. In the middle there, that's the bees in the pupa stage. Then you can see little larval stages, the little white larvae. They're all fed a little bit of royal jelly, and then they're fed on pollen and honey. And if you look carefully, you can see little grains of rice in some of them. Well, they're eggs. They start off as being vertical and then fall over. And 3 days after they've been laid, the bee starts to emerge as the larva. Spends a few days as the larva and then pupates. It takes 21 days from the egg being laid to the bee emerging. That's the worker bees. This chap here is a drone. It's much bigger. It's got a rounded end because he can't sting.